Hi everyone, I'm Sandie La Nae. Welcome to Psychic Creations History Series. You are about to embark on a blast to the past. Eilley Bowers, of Bowers Mansion fame, led a very interesting and historic life. Being I and my co-author have written a book about Eilley and her life, I thought it would be fun to offer you, viewers, a bit of history of this epitome of pioneer woman and the true psychic that she was. So, today's program is titled Eilley Bowers, the Comstock Clairvoyant. Alison Oram was born in Dunfermline, Fife, Forfar, Angus, Scotland, on September 6, 1826. Miss Oram, Eilley, was from a family of old Highland Scottish spiritualists claiming to have the gift of second sight. The gift was passed on to Eilley, which included being clairvoyant and prophetic. Her method of contacting the spirits was through what she called a peepstone, which was an egg-shaped piece of quartz. This mineral was said to be a very special crystal found in a cave among the mountain regions of Scotland. Presbyterian-born, Eilley deemed to follow her sister Betsy and her husband, who had converted to the new belief, Mormonism. At the age of 15, Eilley met handsome missionary Elder Stephen Hunter, and the two were married. Hunter converted Eilley into the Mormon religion. With a mass exodus from Scotland, many new converts traveled to America, across the Atlantic, and sailed up the Mississippi River, locating themselves in Nauvoo, Illinois, a farming town. Quickly becoming a bishop in the church, Hunter and Eilley next started the western trek to the new colony for Mormons, created by Brigham Young in the Great Salt Lake, Utah Territory. Soon, Young instituted polygamy among the brethren. Hunter embraced this ideology, but it did not sit well with Eilley. After a few years living this lifestyle, Eilley sought a divorce. To support herself after the divorce, Eilley began working as a clerk in a store owned by businessman John Reese. As an expansion of the church, and with the colonization program commencing in the up-and-coming new territory of Nevada, Reese, with his business, decided to migrate west and settle into the Carson Valley. Eilley, ever the adventurer, also fancied to travel west. But this would be a hard-pressed journey for a single woman. Having recently met another Mormon man by the name of Alexander Cowan, the two were married in August of 1853. Headed by Elder Orson Hyde, the Mormons left Salt Lake and arrived in June of 1854 at the community of Mormon Station. Eilley and Alexander, among other church members, traveled to this new outpost. By 1855, Mormon Station, now titled Genoa, had grown into a significant settlement. Alexander Cowan was directed to assist Orson Hyde, the mission leader, to establish a county government under the purview of Utah Territory. 30 miles north of Mormon Station in Washoe Valley, Hyde found a beautiful wooded area hugging the Sierras. Eilley expressed interest and persuaded Alexander to settle in this new site, with other Mormon families also relocating there. The community was named Franktown, and in May of 1856, Cowan purchased 320 acres of ranch land near Franktown from John Campbell. He paid $100 for the property. His new ranch was one half of the property known as Ranch Number 2, which included a log house, a corral, a hot springs, and a creek running through it. All was nestled in the pines at the base of the mountain and in the distance were the shores of a large lake. It was a beautiful setting. At the end of June, 250 Mormons had established a community in Washoe Valley. Rumors arose of a federal invasion in Utah as the U.S. government disagreed with the Mormon-controlled government's acceptance of polygamy, its organized militia, and its strong unity of church and state. On September 5, 1857, messengers arrived in Washoe Valley indicating that Brigham Young, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was recalling all Mormon settlers to help defend against the church. Now a highly placed official in the Mormon religion, Alexander remained faithful to the church and returned to Salt Lake City with the majority of other Mormons. Eilley chose to stay behind. Her dislike, too, of the Mormons' practice of polygamy was the main reason that Eilley refused to return to Salt Lake City. Eilley was soon granted a divorce from Cowan under the judgment that she had been abandoned and was given the Franktown acreage in the settlement. Ore was discovered near the Gold Hill areas, and by the winter of 1857, a site called Johntown had become an important community. When Eilley heard the news, she left Franktown and relocated to the booming mining camp about 7 miles above the base of Gold Canyon. Recognizing the need for food and shelter for the then 180 miners, Eilley opened a boarding house. In January of 1859, a large deposit of gold above Johntown was discovered in a place soon to be known as Gold Hill. The new town of Gold Hill grew rapidly, with Johntown's residents, including Eilley. She opened another boarding house and restaurant, which represented one of the earliest developments in Gold Hill. It was here that Eilley met her third and last husband, Lemuel Sanford Bowers. Sandie, as he was known, was born in 1833 in Madison County, Illinois. He was a full-time teamster, driving west in 1856, arriving in Sacramento, California. Soon after, with the mining fever possessing him, he traveled to Johntown and began to prospect around the hills in this new mining community. Once his claims were set, he bought, sold, and traded investments. Prospecting an area known as Spanish Ravine in 1859, Sandie discovered odd-looking chunks of gold-bearing ore, and when assessed, it was discovered the specimens contained a much higher value in silver ore. The Comstock lode was born. As fate would have it, Eilley held a 10-foot claim herself that flanked one of Sandie's 10-foot claim. Owning these two portions of land were a fortuitous occurrence in the couple's future. On August 9, 1858, Eilley and Sandie were married. Together they continued buying and selling claims, and the couple became richer and richer. In 1862, they decided to build a home on the Franktown acreage. The quote-unquote mansion would eclipse anything which had previously been erected in the territory. They traveled to Europe to purchase the finest in furnishings for their home. Upon returning from Europe, which now included daughter Persia, the family moved into the mansion in 1863. With 1865 came the end of the Civil War and the assassination of President Lincoln. With it, too, came a decline in the market value of the Comstock. The market value had fallen from the 1863 high of $40 million to $4 million in December of 1865. Viable ore bodies were exhausted, and new discoveries of ore failed to materialize. The Bowers mines were reaching the end of their productivity. Sandie kept trying to keep his claims alive. He was determined to take care of his property, and like a man possessed, he worked every day in the heat of summer and through the wintry weather. In 1868, Sandie was 35 years old, and on April 21st, he died of lung complications. Before Sandie's death, times were changing. In order to keep going after the crash of 1865, Eilley and Sandie borrowed money to continue the mine's operation, hoping that more rich ore lay just a little deeper. But within 2 years, Sandie mortgaged much of what he and Eilley owned in order to help strengthen the mine. On October 1st of 1865, their taxes on the Washoe property went up as their assessment rose from $2,100 to $2,500, and they were delinquent in paying. To add to their financial problems, on February 10, 1866, the valley enjoyed one of its famous breezes, during which 2 of the large pines adjacent to the Bowers residence were blown down, falling on the house and crashing into a chimney stack. The firewalls were damaged and sundry holes pushed through the roof. Due to the onslaught of a hard winter of 1867 to 1868, spring was followed by heavy flooding, which engulfed the Crown Point ravine, causing the Bowers stamp mill to close for repair, temporarily stopping production. And more money was borrowed. Eilley's career as a wealthy mine owner officially came to an end on July 14, 1869, when George Waters bought the Bowers Mining Company for $10,000. The sale paid only a little of her high debt. No longer was the famous Bowers mine hers. With Sandie gone and the mine no longer a source of income, the mansion was Eilley's only asset. She made improvements in hopes to open her home as a resort, advertising baths, an extensive library, 2 man-made lakes, which added to the splendor of the landscape, which featured mineral waters containing medicinal properties that were beneficial for invalids. Also, a medical doctor was on call, and meals were served at any hour. The richest gold and silver strike in history, known as the Big Bonanza, arrived in March of 1873. With the extension of the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, which connected Virginia City to Reno by way of Washoe Valley, Bowers Mansion became a prime destination for excursions. Springtime brought good picnic weather and a successful entertainment season. During this time, Persia lived in Reno with the Roth family. Eilley believed in the value of education and made arrangements for her daughter to board while attending public school. Eilley did miss her daughter, but Persia came home on weekends and during vacations. Persia returned to Reno on the train Friday evening, July 10, 1874. She didn't feel very well, but everyone considered it was just a letdown from an exciting weekend. On Sunday, her mother was summoned to Reno. Persia was very ill. Persia died on July 14, 1874, and it is believed that her illness and subsequent death was caused by a burst appendix. She was just 12 years old. Eilley was devastated. The funeral was held on Thursday, July 16th, and Persia was buried next to her father in the family plot located right above the mansion. Once again, times were changing. Unable to maintain the mansion and her debts rising higher, by 1876, Eilley could no longer hold off creditors. In May, the District Court of Washoe County ruled against Bowers in favor of her lenders in the sum of $13,000. On May 3rd, the courts auctioned off the remainder of her properties. 8 years after Sandie's death, Eilley lost everything in a sheriff's sale to Mr. Myron Lake, in a sale that garnered $10,000. Eilley, now on her own, needed an income and set herself out into the world using her gift of prognostication. Since early in her life, Eilley had a gift of second sight. Using a clear quartz, egg-shaped stone she called her peepstone, she saw great and grand visions of the future. Eilley was a true psychic in the sense that she was not limited to quartz crystal eggs and spheres to see visions, but could utilize any smooth surface, the glass of a round stopper on a cruet, and non-etched glass soul shakers, just to name a couple. This form of psychic ability is known as scrying, and Eilley was the quintessence of being a scryer. Mostly keeping the second sight to herself, the first time she went public with her talent was to her good friend in Salt Lake City, Mrs. Hawkins, in 1851. Eilley confided that she had been visited with the gift of the Holy Ghost, and that she found herself enabled to foretell happenings in the lives of others. Then, as proof, she used a glass globe that was 2 inches in diameter, covered her head with a piece of black velvet, and gazed intently into the crystal until she became self-hypnotized. Upon reaching this state, she told Mrs. Hawkins many startling events. Comstock founders Peter O'Reilly and Pat McLaughlin, who consulted and believed in Eilley's predictions, went to work on the spot the other miners had deserted. They cut into a massive decomposed black sulphuret of silver filled with glittering spangles of free gold. The great Comstock silver lode was found, and many historians believe that Eilley, through her peepstone prediction, should have been given the credit of the discovery of the Comstock lode. Convinced her peepstone predictions were true, Joseph Webb consulted Eilley. Webb had a valuable bag of gold dust stolen, and Eilley saw the culprit in the peepstone. Webb knew the described man and went in search to confront him. The man denied the allegations, but after a sound thrashing from Webb, he confessed. Near a small cedar tree on the banks of a nearby ravine, the man dug up the sack of gold with his bare hands, returning it to Webb. The man was harshly told to leave town immediately and was never seen again. Eilley could see and predict particular scenarios for people, but she could also predict calamity and tragedy. Eilley had a dark vision that a disastrous fire with a dreadful loss of life would occur somewhere in the mines of Gold Hill. On the early morning of April 7th, 1869, her prediction came true. A fire started blazing in the Yellow Jacket and Crown Point mines at Gold Hill. The new shift of miners had just begun working when the smell of smoke was detected. Soon, heavy black smoke and searing heat prevented the miners from escaping. No fireman could enter into the pits for rescue. 33 men lost their lives that day. As mentioned, Eilley had the ability to find ore, making good on those predictions. In late winter of 1869, Eilley wrote a letter to her friend, Mrs. Thomas Fitch, saying if Judge Goodwin traveled a mile up the canyon to Hamilton, Nevada, he would discover a mine and make money. Goodwin, living in Hamilton, was visited by Thomas Fitch in the spring of 1870. Speaking of Eilley's prophecy, the two men entered into the canyon and discovered the mine in which she had described. As per her predictions, The mine harvested many riches. The excavation site was then dubbed the Good Winds Mine. The judge told Fitch that a good spirit came to visit Eilley, which inspired her. Eilley made a trip to Virginia City in September 1874 and was asked by a Territorial Enterprise reporter if she had any new predictions. And he wrote, Eilley declared she had seen an astounding vision in regards to the mines of the Comstock, that our greatest mines will soon be at the north end of the vein. She said that if she was at present blessed with ready money, she would put every cent of it into the mines in that direction, beginning at the Ophir and going northwards, as immense deposit of ore were shown her in the vein in that quarter. Many persons here have a good deal of faith in her gift of second sight, as she predicted the great fire in the Gold Hill mines. Eilley's prediction was correct. Soon the entire world heard about the greatest bonanza of all time discovered at the north end of Virginia City. The area was developed by John Mackey, James Flood, and William O'Brien, who came to be known as the Bonanza Kings. Another fire vision captured Eilley. She had foreseen a disastrous fire burning Virginia City. In October of 1875, a boarding house keeper named Kate Shea knocked over a lamp, starting a blaze. The Territorial Enterprise later reported, the fire was then whipped and quickly roared down the streets to the main business section of town and beyond. Virginia City was in ruins. This was the most disastrous fire ever seen in Virginia, and people will later remember that Eilley had predicted this catastrophe. Eilley helped out many of her friends using the peepstone. When she lived in Genoa before residing in Franktown, she had good friends in Mr. and Mrs. Frey. In early 1877, Mr. Frey had gone to Placerville in search of better business dealings. He was gone for some time and never sent any money home to his wife and children. Mrs. Frey confided her anxiety to Eilley. Gazing into her crystal ball, Eilley saw what appeared to be a long table. It resembles a 24-foot bar, and Mr. Frey is at the end with the glass in his hand, surrounded by convivial company, Eilley avowed. Just what Mrs. Frey did to bring her husband back home to Genoa was never noted to Eilley. However, she did state, I will take appropriate action. In an autumn month of 1877, a Virginia City friend lost a valuable ring. It had been sent by express from San Francisco, and while still in the package, it was stolen from her pocket as she walked home. Sam Wagner, the town crier, began his bond and a reward of $100 being offered for the return of the jewelry piece. Time passed, and the ring was never recovered. Her friend consulted Eilley, and looking into her peepstone, Mrs. Bowers confirmed, I can see the hand that took the ring, and it will be replaced without paying a reward. The thief will return it, never being seen doing so. A few days later, someone rang the bell at the woman's house. Upon opening the door, no one was there, but the ring, in the same case it had been shipped, was on her doorstep. The mine owner accused Rover of killing Isaac Sharp, McWorthy's partner. Rover was arrested right after Sharp's body was found buried near the mine. Rover, enduring 3 trials, was found guilty at each hearing. The circumstances of the case were weak at best. Rover accused McWorthy of killing, hiding the facts to make him, Rover, appear the guilty party. In February of 1878, Joseph was hanged for the crime at the courthouse yard in Reno. Rover's ghost visited Eilley one evening while she was partaking of her supper, tapped her on her shoulder and said, "I am J.W. Rover, and I have been hanged at Reno, but I am innocent." And here's another one. The Territorial Enterprise on May 16, 1878, printed this article. A lady inquired of Eilley for a séance. She wanted to learn of a man friend's death, and a spiritual apparition did make itself manifest to the lady. After satisfying her of his identity and reciting the circumstances of his death, he informed Eilley to tell the lady, "There is no headboard or stone to mark my grave, but if you call on messengers Wilson and Brown, undertakers, they would show you where I am buried in one of the cemeteries in the north part of the city. I only have one single request to make, that on Decoration Day, please place some flowers on my grave. And if you could see the thousands of disembodied spirits hovering over the cemetery on that occasion, you would feel amply repaid for your trouble." Quote, unquote. Using her psychic gift for predicting future events, at times she could predict future conjunctures for herself. In 1856, one man witnessed and was taken with one of Eilley's self-predictions. He stated, "I was at Mrs. Cowan's log house at Cowan Spring for a load of hay. Mrs. Cowan had a big glass ball about 6 inches through. She took it in both hands, leaned forward, put it up to her eyes, and she foretold, 'I'm going to have more money than I know what to do with, but I'll be poor again.' And as her life progressed, this fortune turned out to be 100% true." Eilley Bowers' health soon began to decline, and the Reno Evening Gazette on October 29, 1903, rang out these headlines: "Death of Mrs. Sandie Bowers in a San Francisco hospital." A telegram from Oakland announces the death of Mrs. Sandie Bowers at the King's Daughters Hospital in that city Tuesday evening. She was the widow of the late Sandie Bowers of Comstock fame, who gained a fortune unexpectedly. A mansion was erected in Washoe Valley, the famous Bowers Mansion. On November 16, 1903, the Reno Gazette-Journal printed this article. The title said, "Eilley's ashes laid to rest to sleep beside her husband and daughter." The article continued to say, "Besides the bodies of Sandie and her daughter Persia, in the burying ground at Bowers Mansion was laid Sunday the ashes of Mrs. Bowers. The last chapter in a romantic history is thus closed, and the woman whose career that has been so strange and turbulent has at last found rest." Thank you so much, viewers, for watching Eilley Bowers, the Comstock Clairvoyant. It's always a pleasure to have you join in, and we'll see you next show.